Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today. Today's guest might just break your brain a little in the best way because Bob Becker isn't just running ultra marathons at 79, he's taking on some of the toughest, most brutal races in the world. Races longer than 100 miles, races that take over 2 days, races most people half his age would not dare attempt. But here's what blew me away. Bob did not even start running until his 50s. He's not a lifelong athlete. He's a guy who just got curious, laced up, and never looked back. This isn't just another viral story of look at this old guy running. Bob is on another level. We talk about what drew him to the sport, how he stays injury free, and what keeps him chasing discomfort, meaning, and personal best as he nears 80. In fact, by the time this episode is released, he would have turned 80. So happy birthday, Bob. And then there was this one moment in this conversation that gave me chills. Bob tells the story of missing the 48-hour cutoff at Badwater, something that might feel like failure on paper. But after the race, a woman from a nearby campground quietly handed him a note. And when he opened it later, it said, I have been looking for a reason to stay alive. As I watched you make it up that hill, I told God, if you make it to the finish line, I promise to live 100 more days. It's hard to even put that into words, but it reminded me that sometimes the most meaningful victories aren't the ones on the stopwatch. They are the ones we will never fully see. So, if you have ever thought it's too late or wondered whether your efforts really matter, this conversation will stay with you. Welcome to the world of Bob.
Well, right now I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in my condominium apartment. For breakfast this morning, I had a healthy granola with some almond milk, a bunch of fruit, some coffee, um, some quality bread with peanut butter, and I'm ready to go.
Amazing. Well, you sound fortified, and I'm curious, is that like a pre-workout breakfast that you typically do, or do you like do one of those like fasting workouts and then you come back home and
Yeah,
replenish?
pretty much the latter. I may have a little something beforehand, but for the most part, no, I don't eat much. I might have a little Larabar mini or a gel or something, but typically I eat breakfast after it's all done. I don't have a lot in my stomach to begin with, typically.
Sure. And then that breakfast tastes that much tastier, right? When you have put the effort in.
You've earned it. That's right.
Amazing. Actually, an old surfing friend of mine, we used to always joke that, one always needs to be earning one's brekkie, and brekkie being short for breakfast.
Of
And when
course.
I started this podcast for a little bit, I toyed with that idea of calling this podcast "Earning Your Brekkie," but then people told me that nobody understood that. So,
I would
fortunately, abandoned that idea.
I would have understood it, but there's one.
Thank you, Bob.
I like it.
Thank you. And Bob, how old are you?
79 and three quarters. I will be 80 on April 18th. So it's the big numbers
Amazing.
coming
Well,
right or coming right up.
big big is coming right up. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
And I actually just turned 47 yesterday, and I feel I'm getting closer to 50. So it's, yeah, for me, that seems like a big number.
Gosh, I can't even remember 50. So yeah, my youngest kid is only 2 years younger than you. So yeah, there you go.
Okay, okay. I get it. I'm still a little baby here. I want to start off talking of age. I want to start by painting a contrast. Most people your age are winding down, maybe enjoying retirement, spending time with family, taking it easy. Meanwhile, you are grinding through 100-mile plus races in brutal conditions. Yeah, what is it about this challenge that keeps calling you back?
I suppose it's that type A personality of mine. The old competitive spirit. I, I enjoy it. I still love it. My life has been largely oriented around ultra running for the last 20 years, or close to it. So actually more than that, um, with running itself, but also for the last 17, I've been a full-time race director producing ultramarathon races. So basically everything I know and all my friends and all of it's all geared around this passion of mine. And I think a big part of it actually is because I hear so often from people that I've inspired them or their parents to get off the sofa and do something they might not otherwise have done, presumably healthy things, moving. And that for me is a huge motivator to keep doing this as long as I can and as long as I still want to. And at this point, I still do.
That sounds incredible, Bob. I understand that you may not have even started formally running until you were in your 50s. Yeah, so talk to us about your first big run, or what was that launch point where you felt like this was great, this is my calling, or was it like that was terrible, I will never do it again?
Well, fortunately, the former and not the latter. I ran the mile back in high school. And during my entire adult life, I played sports, went to the gym, worked out to stay in shape, never power lifted or anything. I'm a little guy. And I ran a little bit to stay in shape, but I never raced. I think probably in maybe my 40s or early 50s, I might have done a 5K associated with a business conference or something, but I wasn't a runner. When I was 57 in 2002, I got a call from some friends of mine in Minnesota, where I had just lived. I moved from there to Florida in 2000, early 2001, and they said, "We're going to run Grandma's Marathon. Why don't you come up here and join us?" And it was out of the blue, and I thought, it's a great excuse to party with my friends, so why not? So I literally went to a shoe store here in Fort Lauderdale and bought a pair of running shoes and then said to them, okay, what do I do now? I'm going to be running a marathon in June. And they put me in touch with a training program here, a group that's still around. And I started training with this group and made friends immediately, some of whom are still my very close friends. And went up and ran Grandma's, and I did pretty well. I wound up actually qualifying for Boston. And, this was going to be a one and done, but I couldn't not do Boston. So I kind of got the disease just a little bit. Um, and I wound up actually later in the year, excuse me, moving over to a different group, kind of a faster group of runners, and continued to train with them for a long, long time. In 2004, one of them said to me, "Have you ever heard of the Marathon des Sables? It's an ultra marathon." And I said, "What's an ultra marathon?" Because, like so many people 20 years ago, I didn't know what an ultra marathon was. So I went home and checked it out. And I saw that the next version of the Marathon des Sables in Morocco in the Sahara Desert was going to be in April of 2005. So the following week, and I was very intrigued by the whole idea. So the next week, I went back and talked to Jared, this friend who had asked me the question initially. And I said, "Don't you have a birthday ending in a zero next April?" And he said, "Yes, I'm turning 40." And I was turning 60. And I said, "Jay, why don't we give ourselves a birthday present and do this race?" And that's how it started. His wife hasn't talked to me since, by the way. But so yeah, we took it seriously. We both trained well. That's in fact when I met Lisa Smith Batch, and I'm sure we'll be talking about Lisa at some point. I went to her Jay Batch and Lisa to their training camp for Marathon des Sables. That's how I met them, and I went out to Morocco in April, and it was just a mesmerizing experience. It was for me absolutely life changing. I just fell in love with the challenge, but also with the camaraderie that was very, very much in evident at that race. And the thing I learned then, and I see it repeated over and over and over again in the sport of ultra running, is if you have trouble out there on the course and somebody sees you, they're going to typically stop to help. And doesn't mean people aren't competitive and don't want to beat you race wise, but people support each other and recognize that the next person to run out of water or whatever it is could be them. It's very much an integral part of the spirit of the sport. And actually, the story I love to tell was my first 100-mile individual race in 2007 when I wasn't prepared for the very, very cold weather at night. I was really freezing. It was it was a race of 4 25-mile loops. Rocky Raccoon was the race. And in the middle of the night, late at night, I was almost too cold to continue. And a runner came through, saw what was going on. I didn't have any clothes to put on. He was layered up and literally took his shirt off his back and gave me his shirt so that I could continue the race. My literal shirt off the back story. And it's that spirit that in part won me over. Plus, again, as I say, the challenge of doing this extraordinary stuff that we ultra runners do. I was hooked and been at it ever since.
Thanks for sharing that wonderful story of your beautiful and fiery beginnings
I,
into the sport. Uh, Going back to that moment, when you started, you got this, let's say, this random invite to travel to Minnesota to do this race, and sounds like your personality type is to say yes. Is it?
it, yes, yes, it
Is it
is.
the kind of? Is it your? Yeah, yeah. I'm just wondering if there's like some sort of a peek into who you are as a person, Bob. Like, you know, you didn't even own a pair of proper running shoes, and you accepted this invite. Is that a personality trait that you have had all your life, or is that something that you have honed over the years, which is to, jump into things, embrace things, and then take them as far as you can?
Thinking about it as you ask it, probably a personality trait. I can sit here and think of lots of examples, both in terms of athletics and sports um, and business, where somebody comes up with an idea or I conjure up an idea and I say, why not? Other people can do it. Why can't I? That sort of thing. Um, I remember the first time I ever tried barefoot water skiing. I mean, why do such a crazy thing? Well, because my friends were doing it and why couldn't I? So, and I've never let age be within reason. I've never let age be a consideration. If somebody else can do it, I always believe at least the possibility exists that I can too. So yeah, good question. I think it's probably a personality trait.
Well, Yeah, I mean, you accepted this thing, this invitation. Did you have any idea of how profoundly it could shape the next couple of decades when you went?
Absolutely not. No, no idea. No idea whatsoever. And even running that first marathon, which again was going to be a one-off, and then qualifying for Boston, saying, okay, I've got to run Boston. That was also the end of the story. In theory, I wasn't looking at the long term at all. I had no idea what ultras were, as I explained earlier. So yeah, that it just evolved. It just happened. There was no life plan there. That's for sure.
This is incredible, Bob. Like you were in your late 50s, you had no background in, let's say, formal running, and something happened when you went to Minnesota after doing a bit of training. Two things I can see of. One is you obviously did quite well. You qualified for Boston. And then maybe something shifted in you and you found out that this was like a calling. So, yeah, talk to us about like what was this like pivotal thing that happened? Suddenly you found yourself in love with running and racing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we had just moved. My wife and I had just moved to Florida from Minnesota, where we had lived for 4.5 years, and 2.5 before that in also in the Midwest, and prior to that in Maryland for many, many years. Um, and the things I did when I wasn't working in Maryland were different than the things I did in the freezing cold upper Midwest when we lived there for 7 years. But I always been a play hard, work hard kind of guy, and I always wanted something to be able to do. When I moved here to Florida uh, and got that invitation and began running, that seemed to me to be something I could do because, among other things, you can run 365 days a year here. I don't know that I'm really answering the question, but uh, well, actually, I'm sorry. You better, would you repeat the question? I've lost my train of thought.
Certainly. What I was trying to get to is, you accepted this invite, um, and you showed up in Minnesota for this race with some training, with a new pair of running shoes, and you did quite well. So, what I'm wondering is like, obviously, you had some latent talent for running, right? How was it that you only found yourself in this position to run this race? Like, were you busy doing other sporting activities? Um, and then what happened at that race? Like, you sound like there was some kind of love at first sight, where you had such a good time, and you're like, you know what? I just want to keep doing this.
I've been thinking a lot about energy, not just in training, but in recovery, in focus, in how we age. So when I came across NutriSense, it hit home. It's a program that pairs a 24 by 7 glucose biosensor with a dedicated dietitian to help you understand how your body responds to food, stress, sleep, and movement, and then act on the data. I chose it because I wanted something real, not another hack or one size fits all plan, just honest insight into what's actually going on inside me and how to build habits that last. NutriSense has helped over 150,000 people take that step. And if you want to try it, you can get 33% off your first month with code Ageless15 at nutrisense.io. Again, that's nutrisense.io, code Ageless15. You can also find this information on the show notes for this episode.
There's a certain element of that. I did enjoy it. On the other hand, I remember after the race was over, sitting down and thinking how my feet really hurt. But it somehow spoke to me. I mean, like I told you, I ran the mile in high school. I played sports my whole life. I'd go to the gym and do these boot camp kind of heavy workouts in every one of the places I lived in, including Florida. But I wasn't really playing sports here at that time. So maybe I was looking for something else to do and it just fell in my lap. And it looked like, okay, I can do this. And maybe I can run a little faster the next time, which in fact happened at Boston. And um, yeah, I mean, again, because I started training with a group and had not been living here too long, I wound up making friends who happened to be runners. And so my social life expanded right away,
Ah.
and it became part of my life, and remains that way. So I think it was kind of the same piece. It was partly it was timing. That makes sense to you?
Yeah,
Excuse
100%.
me.
No, that makes so much sense that some beautiful things came together between your move to a new place, your um, let's say maybe this timing of this opportunity falling into your lap when you were ready for it, and then the opportunity running offered for you to make friends in a new place and find this community. One last question here. So, Bob, like you had talked about running a little bit in the past, but you didn't take it up formally until you went to Minnesota. Was there something also about running or that race which has that which appealed to you so personally, like where it could be actually I'll let you speak to that, because one can go and do this run and have a good time, but then it just kind of launched you into this path. So I'm just wondering if there was something during that race that really transformed you, made you light up, and you felt like, okay, you know what, this is something that is so profoundly appealing to me, and I'm just gonna keep taking this further and further.
I don't know that I thought it through that at that time that way, but it certainly appealed to me. I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the beauty of running that course, for example. And interestingly, I have one sister, and my sister's son, Adam, is an Olympian. Adam Goucher and his wife, Kara Goucher, are Olympians. And Kara is from Duluth, Minnesota, where Grandma's Marathon takes place. So I got to spend some time with her family up there, and certainly uh, their excellence as runners is not only a source of pride, but a source of motivation for me as well. And so when I ran this race and did well, I thought, maybe should consider doing more of this. And again, of course, the Boston motivation was a big help. And then again, training for Boston that following year, and meanwhile becoming part of this group of runners, and creating a regular Saturday morning and Thursday night running routine that I hadn't done before. It all cemented the whole picture for me as a new resident of Florida and as somebody who was no longer playing basketball, but found a new sport that maybe I could stick with for a while. Yeah, and so that's kind of how it evolved. Again, there really wasn't a plan, but there was a little piece here, a little piece there that contributed to the good timing that put this thing in my lap, and with which I then kept going with it. That's really kind of my best answer for you.
Thanks for sharing about the Olympians in your family. Sounds like there is something special in your gene pool
Yeah.
when it comes to endurance sports. And again, many people may attempt to begin a sport like this in their upper 50s, but very few are able to maybe stick with it. Maybe they do it once. You took it that much deeper. So before that, you spoke about doing some other sports. You talked about going to the gym, about doing boot camps. I'm just wondering, like, was there something special in some of this, let's say, non-running training that you did, or maybe your genetics, which allowed you to just take it further and further? You did this marathon, you did like so well, and then you started training and competing in longer distances. So did that like just come naturally to you, Bob?
Well, I think part of it's genetics, but a lot of it was I was in pretty good shape because I worked out and was and had been for years and years. So my core strength is good, and I guess the, my running style is such that I've really never had uh, knee problems or most typical runner issues. So whatever that running thing is, it is a natural thing for me. Plus, again, I think the idea of having a core, a strong foundation, is what enables me to go out there and do that sort of thing. And I'm always up for a challenge, always up for something that I hadn't thought about before or had never tried before. So if there was a period from 2003 to 2006 when I was actually commuting from Fort Lauderdale up to Northern Virginia, the DC suburbs. I would fly up on Sunday night, work all week, come back on Friday night. I did that for almost 3 years. So since I was there during the week, I joined a gym up there and got involved with a kind of a heavy duty boot camp group that was led by a guy whose name was Sean Birch. And Sean, among other things, in 2004 set the speed ascent record up Mount Kilimanjaro. I mean, he's a mountaineer like yourself, a climber. He's done a lot of first attempts in different places. In any event, that was in 2004. He came back and he said to those bunch of us in the class, "Hey, I'm going to go back next year and just climb Kilimanjaro just to have fun. Would anybody like to come with me?" I never climbed a mountain. I never had any thought about climbing a mountain, but I said, wow, here's an opportunity to do this with this guy and who's already been there and who's done it faster than anybody else. Why not? So in 2000, I'm maybe getting it was 2006, excuse me, 2006. He set the record in 5. 2006, went and ran Kilimanjaro, climbed Kili. And that's the kind of stuff that somebody will mention an adventure to me or something I hadn't tried before. And if the circumstances are right, time wise, money wise, and everything else, if there's an opportunity for me to do it, I'm going to try to do it. And that's not atypical for me.
Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
That sounds, again, yeah, uh, accepting a challenge, being a little pragmatic about it. Of course, it has to come together well. And but then once you accept it, like seems like there's no looking back. You you take it all the way. I want to talk a little bit about your journey as you progressed, and you took part in some incredible races. This race and the training in Morocco sounds incredible across the Sahara. So can you talk to us about that particular event? And I think it was your first big ultra, and you went overseas, and there was this preparatory period with Lisa, how did you discover this thing and how did you get so inspired to want to go from like, again, maybe doing marathons or more to being now at like the, let's say the cutting edge or like the biggest like canvas in the sport?
Well, again, 2002 was my first marathon, and then in 2003 I ran Boston. In June of 2003, I went back to Minnesota because my friends were going back there, so I went up to just run it with them again. And that was really the last marathon I ever ran, other than I ran a few for training purposes for ultras. But I never really ran another marathon again to see if I could beat my time or anything like that. So that was 2000 and into 2003. Again, in 2004, this running friend asked me if I'd ever heard of MDS, Marathon des Sables. And when I checked it out, I was absolutely fascinated by the idea that you could spend 7 days running almost 160 miles in the Sahara Desert in Morocco, and how it worked, a stage race where each day you run a certain number of miles called a stage. You basically sleep in a tent with 9 of your newfound friends. You get up the next morning, you do it again, you sleep and you do it again. And you carry all your own gear, food, and everything for that week on your back, with the exception of water, which is just too heavy. You couldn't do that. So the race provides water. It provides the tent for 10, which at least then was basically a bunch of canvas coffee sacks sewn together and held up in the air with sticks. I mean, very, very rudimentary, with like Persian type rugs on the ground, so you're not right on the sand, although the sand gets in there for sure. And you're just packed in tight next to all these people. And again, that certainly contributes to the camaraderie in getting to know people. Well, that was in April of 2005. Unfortunately, I wound up fracturing my femur during that race, which was not caused by a specific incident. The only thing I've been able to figure out is that I had probably had a stress fracture before I ever arrived and didn't know it, probably from overtraining. But so I started running, and then each day I got successively slower, and then it was walking, and then it was hobbling. I wound up going to the medical tent with 2 days left to go. There was the race includes a 50-mile day. I had completed the 50-mile day. There were only 2 short days left, but I was hardly able to walk at all. And so I went to the tent, and they took an X-ray with their portable X-ray machine and said, "Yeah, you've got a fracture, and we're pulling your number. You can't finish." When I was devastated, although it turned out it was the right decision. So I came home. I wound up having surgery. I had a couple of pins put in my hip, putting me back together again. And that was in 2005, and it was a slow process healing because it wasn't 25 anymore, as my surgeon kept telling me when I would complain about how long recovery was taking. And then I started feeling better. I started running a little bit, and I found out in February of 2006 that I had developed prostate cancer. So I had surgery shortly in March, I think it was March or April, March, I guess. Caught it early. My father had died from prostate cancer, so I was very aware of it and checked it early and caught it early. So that was in March. It was in May that this group was climbing Kilimanjaro. The doctor said, "If you feel like doing it, you can do it." So I did. So it proved a couple things to me. One, there are a lot of these challenges that I don't think I have to be restricted from doing by age, as long as I'm, as you use the word, pragmatic. I don't want to, don't be stupid about it. I don't have a death wish. The second thing, going back to Marathon des Sables, while I wound up with that fracture, I absolutely knew that I could have otherwise done that race. I mean, there was no question in my mind that I wanted to do it again, or do something like it again. That, again, age was not the reason I didn't finish that race. I didn't finish it because, unfortunately, I broke a bone. And so that was motivating in the sense that I just knew that I could do more and wanted the opportunity to do more. I didn't know what the next big thing would be, but anyway, that was where my head was at that point. So as these other opportunities came together, and Lisa was part of that, being in touch with her and asking for her suggestions about maybe what other races should I consider. That's kind of how that's where my head was, and that's kind of how my ultra journey began or continued after those temporary setbacks.
Wow, Bob, you certainly, in many ways your accomplishments are extraordinary. At the same time, you have fought back against at least some key challenges that all of us do, including including cancer, including broken or injured joints, injured limbs. One thing I wanted to ask you is about how you met Lisa and got on this training journey, because it sounds like you were also uh, forward thinking about the kind of training and coaching that would help you accomplish a race like that. And one thing that intrigues me is you found this coach, and at any point was there any skepticism from Lisa or others in your training camp, or others maybe who were approving your applications to enter these races on, again, how old you were, right? Because you were, I'm guessing, often one of the older people there. So did they ever question or challenge your ability to undertake these massive races, and how did you fight that?
Well, I met Lisa Smith Batchen at the training camp in advance of Marathon des Sables. She and her husband Jay were actually the American representatives of this race, which is based in France, or at least was at the time. And so their training camp was very specific to preparing for that race. And I learned so much. It was incredible. And, kind of fell in love with both of them. They're great people. And she's the most positive person in the world. But she's also a realist in many ways. So when it comes to me and my training and my age, the training regimen that she provides for me would be very different from the training regimen she would provide for you. Each of her clients is specific. The training regimen is specific to them, their ability, their condition, including their age, what their work schedule allows, and all the rest of it. So I just found that with Lisa, it was a very, very good fit, and that it wasn't one size fits all. I knew that I was in good hands. And in fact, I've never really been injured, and I've always been ready on race day because of her person-specific training, if you will, an event-specific training, right? So the training for Badwater is going to be different from some race in cold climate somewhere, or a trail race. Yeah, it's just she's been training me regularly for 20 years, and there is no one coach that's the perfect fit for everybody, but she certainly has been the perfect fit for me, and she has crewed me before. In fact, I'll be running Badwater again this summer, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Lisa will be my crew chief at Badwater, so there's a close relationship there, and she just, she's my mentor in every way.
Sure. Lisa is amazing, and I've heard that from different people now on her ability to identify every individual's unique needs and then provide an appropriate training plan. Just trying to get a peek into what some of the training would look like to help you prepare for either the race across the Sahara or Badwater that you're famous for. Could you give us a sense, Bob, of what, let's say, a day or a week of training would look like in the time leading up to either of those races?
Yeah, well, Lisa's not a believer in just long mileage, as some trainers, some coaches are, and that's fine for some runners. She's a big believer in core strength, developing core strength. So that's part of your week is going to be involved with some lifting, some core work, and probably some cross training. So it's not all about miles. So for a race like Marathon des Sables, where you're carrying at the beginning probably anywhere from 25 to 28 pounds on your back, not something most of us are used to running with. The training involves starting to use a running pack and building weight so you get used to the weight that you're going to be carrying. Now, as each day goes by, you kind of eat through some of those pounds, but still a lot of weight that you're carrying, certainly at the beginning. And you're running through sand and rocks for 160 miles. So fortunately, I live in Florida. I live at the beach so that I'm able to run on the beach and train on the beach. So a lot of the training involved running with the pack on the sand. I mentioned to you earlier that I had run a couple of additional marathons as training runs. Well, so I ran the Miami Marathon with a pack on my back with a bunch of weight. That was to get some distance and also to have that weight training. So that would be an example. And both Badwater and Marathon des Sables involve a certain amount of climbing. Certainly, Badwater does. And Florida, where I am, is dead flat. There just are no hills. So, I like to joke that the biggest hill we have is the 17th Street Causeway, and at the top of the bridge, it's 75 feet above sea level. So, you can only get so much hill training when you don't have hills. So, some of the techniques that Lisa uses, other than obvious stuff like find an office building and climb stairs up and down, or use a Stairmaster, is pulling a tire. And I don't know that Lisa necessarily originated it, but it's certainly the first time I'd ever heard of such a thing. So it's a technique basically where you wear a waist belt with a rope attached to it, and about 12 feet behind you, it's attached to like an SUV tire that you pull along the ground. And what it does is it creates drag, which in effect simulates uphill running or walking. So a lot of the training I did then was pulling a tire to again get used to the notion of hills. And then if I was out of town somewhere and there was an opportunity to run a hill, I would try to take advantage of those things. So a typical week, to again get back to your core question, is certainly running an appropriate number of miles, but it's also cross training and then finding ways to approach the specifics of that event, geographic, weather-wise, the surface you're going to be running on, the heat, for example, which is another big deal for both of those races. Again, I'm here in hot Florida, but I also spend time, especially before Badwater, in a sauna because it's extremely dry heat at 120 plus degrees. Where here it's a very different kind of humid heat, and so I do both. Run outside here in the heat, but also use a dry sauna. So lot of component parts.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together: training, aging, mindset, and all. You will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds like training that was carefully customized for
Correct.
each goal.
Mhm.
And I can only imagine people who may have seen you dragging a tire behind you in the beaches or the streets of Fort Lauderdale and what may have crossed their mind. Wanted to ask you a little bit about the race itself. You talked about, sleeping in threadbare tents and finding camaraderie and support with your crew of runners. I've also heard this being said that pain is a given in ultra running, and but suffering is a choice. So, uh, do you believe that? And then, yeah, how do you, Bob? How do you personally separate pain from suffering when you are 100 miles deep into a race and then everything hurts?
Well, unfortunately, I've had my share of DNFs, did not finish races as well. Marathon des Sables being the first one because they wouldn't let me with a broken femur. And it's always humbling, but you also learn a lot from it, which is that it's I like to say, and it's not original, I suppose, but the pain unless it's a real life-threatening kind of a thing or permanent injury kind of a thing, pain is temporary, and the bragging rights when you finish are forever. You chose to be out there, and the idea, the sense of accomplishment when crossing the finish line for me uh, is pretty overwhelming. And so when I'm in that pain cave and really hurting and don't want to continue and asking myself, what the hell am I doing out here? I always try to take a moment and offset that with the notion that I chose to be here. And at the point at which I cross that finish line, it may take me a little while to recover, but I will recover. And I'll be awfully glad that I finished and I didn't stop, didn't have that DNF, because whenever I have one, there was always deep regret, no matter what the reason is. I had a unfortunate experience. I had one time opportunity to run Western States and got to get out there about Truckee at about, I don't know, 5 days, 4 or 5 days before the race to get acclimated and get organized. And I immediately developed a very bad cold and a lung infection. So here's my one and only opportunity, having been awarded a special entry to run Western. And basically, I couldn't do it. I went to the start line, but I just missed the cutoff, the first cutoff at 30 miles, and I was done. And absolutely the most devastating race that I've ever had. And yet it wasn't anything I could really do about it. But the point is, when you don't finish a race, it's very, very frustrating, and you want to absolutely minimize that feeling whenever you can. So if your feet are blistered or whatever, aches and pains, you kind of work through them, and it's mind over matter. You may know of a Canadian ultra runner and adventurer whose name is Ray Zahab, and I love something that Ray said a number of years ago. He said, "Ultra running is 90% mental, and the rest is in your head." I just love that idea because obviously you have to train, but it is a mental game. There's no question about it, and I try to keep that in mind.
For sure. And actually, Ray has been on the podcast.
Okay.
And I encourage people to listen to Ray's episode as well. He shared some, incredible words of wisdom, including, I think he talked about this one as well. You talked about this for sure. DNFs are unfortunate because there's so much preparation that has gone in, and some of these opportunities are rare, like being invited and making time to come to California, for example, for the Western states. Again, curious, Bob, talk to us maybe about maybe one of the worst moments that you've had to push through, because running is an incredible activity. A lot of us will go running and then we will often stop because we're like, okay, you know what? We are tired now. This is hurting.
Yeah.
But being able to complete an ultra run requires one to push through sometimes really deep moments. So, is there a particular moment that comes to mind when things were incredibly brutal, but you kept going?
Yeah, I suppose the best example was 3 years ago at Badwater, 2022. And I was trying to set the record as the oldest finisher at 77 at the time. And I was doing well. I was on track. My time was good. But the further down the course I got, I think problem probably started after about 100 miles. So I had another 35 miles to go, including a 13-mile climb up Mount Whitney to the finish line. And my back started giving out, and I started leaning, not to the side, but leaning forward. And I just couldn't straighten up. It was really bothering me a lot. And by the time I got into Lone Pine, I was almost bent in half. I mean, my body, I looked like an L shape or something. And it wasn't so much pain as it was just the inability to stand up straight and to move in a normal way. And it was putting pressure on my legs, and it was not good. Well, I still had a lot of time, in theory, to finish the race. So I started up the mountain, and by the time I got within about a mile of the finish line, not only had my back seized up and was totally worthless, but my legs began to seize up as well. And I literally had to use my hands to help my legs one step at a time. I'd go 12 or 15 steps, and I had to stop and take a break and try to straighten up a little bit and then do it again. And as I approached the finish line, even closer, that just wasn't working. So it turned out that the race medical director was walking alongside me, being sure that I wasn't that I was okay. That first of all, I was lucid. Secondly, that I wasn't going to have permanent damage. And I wasn't. I was fine. I was totally lucid. It was just my back. And at one point I said to her, if I could change up the muscle movement a little, maybe that would help. I said, is there any reason why I couldn't get out on all fours and bear crawl a little bit? And she thought about it and said, well, the rule is you have to get to the finish line under your own power. So, why not? So I did. I did some bear crawling up that mountain for a while and stood up and walked, and then bear crawled again. And I wound up finishing, but I wound up finishing 17 minutes over the 48-hour cutoff. That was one of the most difficult and frustrating experiences of my life. But I wasn't going to not finish that day, and I didn't care what was involved. And I just was bound and determined to make it. And there were a lot of people up there urging me on and helping me, encouraging me to do what I could to finish. And I suppose that's the best example I can give you of a kind of a tough day.
Wow. Well, you were dogged and creative in not giving up and making sure you completed the race. Bob, any specific mental strategies that you have created, adopted, or honed over the years that have helped you push through these dark moments? Because like we talked about earlier, yes, it is really all mental once you get past a certain point.
Yes and no. I wish I had something enlightening to be able to share with your listeners. I really do. I don't know that I really have. I mean, one of the things that I've learned is to really be in the moment. People ask me all the time, "What are you thinking about out there?" And I respond to them by saying, I'm not writing the next great American novel in my head. I can assure you of that. I'm very much in the moment. I'm thinking of that next step. I'm thinking of that next footfall. And importantly, I'm thinking of getting to a point 2 miles or 5 miles up the road. In other words, taking a small bite out of this 100-mile race. That's my goal. And then once I'm there, then it's the next one. So it's piece by piece. And yeah, the other thing where it's allowed in recent years, I've listened to audiobooks as something that really distract me and make the time go by very quickly. Of course, in some races you can't do that. But music, typically not. More often it's an audiobook of some kind, and it might just be something totally frivolous, like an adventure thing or a spy thing. And other times it might be historical, but it's more than likely not too serious, but something that interests me so I can focus and it keeps me going. But yeah, I really don't have any specific mantra or other than again always keeping my eyes on that finish line. Keep your eyes on the prize kind of thing. That I'm not going to DNF this thing if it's humanly possible.
Well, one certain thing that you point to is the importance of goal setting. Like you have this North Star, which is like, I'm training not for just for health or for sanity. I'm training because I have this concrete goal in mind. So to me, it sounds like
Excuse
for somebody listening who's trying to, fight an uphill battle with either fitness, sports, athletics, or anything, it sounds like having a finish line, a goal is key. I also want to ask you this, which is you've had some setbacks. You mentioned you had a femur injury. Then you also talked about fighting and overcoming cancer. And I am curious if there were naysayers in that journey that you have proven wrong. Maybe your doctors, maybe others, other well-intentioned people around you.
Yeah, never doctors. But when I first did Marathon des Sables, again, I was commuting back and forth to Virginia, and I was working for a company up there. And one of the things I wanted to do was raise money for prostate cancer, which as a part of that raise, which I did. And I remember a lot of the people in the company thinking I was completely nuts. They were supportive, but they said this makes no sense, particularly at your age. So I wind up coming back with a broken leg, which to many of them proved their point, which to me didn't prove their point at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And so, yeah, there were some naysayers in those days. That's for sure. But for the most part, uh, people have been very encouraging, not the other way around. And again, part of it, I think, Kush, is that I've been careful to choose races that are or event or adventures that are realistic for me. Um, I told you where I live and where I train. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for me to, even if I could get in, to try to race hard rock, right? I mean, there's no way I could train for it. There's no way. Um, when I was younger, and when I say that, I'm talking about in my 60s, I would bomb down a downhill trail. No more. I am much, much more careful. I just can't do it. So not only is training for that kind of a steep technical mountain race not realistic, but uh, I wouldn't make the cutoffs anyway because I'd be too slow, too careful, too trepidatious. So part of it is picking a race that makes sense. And in a couple of cases where I've done really, really well, I had chosen a race where I really thought, given the circumstances of the race, that I had a chance to win it or to break a record or something like that. So yeah, I train. I select my races very carefully. There are only so many I have left in me, so I'm careful of what I choose.
Certainly, yes. No, I think you point to that um, before as well, which is the importance of being realistic and planned, but then also I think being willing to maybe rewrite the script a little bit, but because again, like
Right.
there isn't a script out there for people who are pushing 80, running for like 100 plus miles in Death Valley. And you also seem so self-aware, Bob, of who you are and your strengths, and also perhaps your opportunities. But if you take your running career, or maybe if you take one of your most important and uh, proud races, is there something about the sport that is revealing to you about yourself that you didn't already know?
Well, part of it is recognizing when I do something that is, at least for me, a little bit on the extraordinary side, is that, yeah, I can do that. I can set a goal, um, look a little bigger than maybe to most people would make sense, and be able to accomplish it. And as the years go by, I'm still able to do those things, so that it once again gets back to the notion that there's no reason that age has to stand in the way of adventure and excitement and doing difficult things and remaining active in this world of sports. And uh, so it's sort of like each time I'm able to do something, it motivates me to want to do or explore even more. Um, it's self-fulfilling, I suppose, in that respect, if that makes any sense. When I select a difficult race, something that most people would think doesn't make a whole lot of sense for somebody my age, or maybe it doesn't make any sense at all. Why would somebody run 100 miles or whatever it is? And then I finish it or I accomplish it. It becomes self-motivating. It tells me, yeah, I can look at bigger and better, bigger and more complicated things, and absolutely have the opportunity to complete them, to set the goal and achieve the goal. And there's no reason why I can't continue to do that indefinitely, as long as, again, I'm pragmatic about what makes sense. I mean, I'm still 80 years old, but uh, the challenging myself is still very important to me. And I'm sure it will be for a long time. And by actually being able to accomplish something, or know that I could have, except for some odd circumstance like getting sick, it motivates me to continue to look for the next big thing, or just the next fun adventure to have. That's all. Running with friends in Europe or something, which I did last year. It wasn't a race; it was just a one-off adventure that was absolutely fun. A blast. At a great time, and we ran a lot of miles, but it was something I was able to do and absolutely love doing. So it doesn't have to be a formal race either. It can be a one-off kind of adventure.
Absolutely. You have built in the last couple of decades, Bob, this incredible running career, and you've also given back through nurturing this amazing community with the work that you're doing. Could you speak about the work that you're doing outside of the running itself?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think I mentioned my first ultra was 2005 Marathon Stop, and I came back to Fort Lauderdale, and for the next year or so was uh, looking around and realizing how very few ultra marathons there were, certainly in Florida, and there weren't any in South Florida at all. Keeping in mind that in 2005, I didn't even know what an ultra marathon was, and I was a runner, so most people certainly did not know what an ultra marathon was. Very, very small world. So I came back, and shortening the long story, some friends of mine and I decided that maybe running across the islands of the Florida Keys could be a race and could be really interesting. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. You've got the ocean on one side and the Gulf of Mexico on the other side. So in April of 2007, 5 of us went down to Key Largo at the beginning of the Keys and ran 100 miles to Key West with a group of 7 supporting us, and thought that, yeah, this could become something. This could be a race, could be viable. And so the next year, 2008, in May, the Keys 100 was born, with 131 people running the distance. And as the race director, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Learned it all the hard way. There was a momentous change in my life at that point. It was around the time of the real estate crisis and the economic collapse here in the United States, well, not just here in the States, but and without going into unnecessary detail at this point, I was looking for something else to do and decided to take a vow of poverty and become a race director. And and that's what happened. And so for the last 17 years, I've been a full-time race director, creating new races and producing them. And really introducing thousands of people to the sport over those years. And I'm very, very proud of that and excited about it because it's been really great to me. It's not everybody's cup of tea, that's for sure, but it's been really fun to see new people see their eyes open to the possibilities for themselves. So yeah, I at this point, Keys 100 is my primary race, and I also produce a race from Jacksonville, Florida to Daytona Beach called Daytona 100. Both are point-to-point 100-mile races along the ocean road. So they're beautiful, flat. Um, Daytona is in December, so the weather's great. It's a perfect race for a PR, for personal best, or for a first ultra. Keys is run in May when it's really, really hot. So it's beautiful, but it's also very, very challenging, much harder than it looks on paper. And in fact, this weekend uh, is the inaugural Miccosukee Glades Runner race. The Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida hired me as a race director to help them put on a brand new ultramarathon, and it is this weekend. It's in a few days out in the Everglades. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, for me, creating these races, that's the most fun, and bringing people into the sport, training people, even volunteers, all of it. I love doing it, and that's what I've been doing full time and still do uh, since 2008. So yeah, keeps me out of trouble, Kush. It really does. I have no time to get in trouble at all.
Yeah. Bob, thank you for all the work you've done in giving back. I'm curious, in your time introducing new people to the sport, like you are leading by example, that aging doesn't have to mean the inevitable decline. Do you have maybe one or two stories of transformation where somebody that you perhaps inspired or coached or brought into running changed their lives?
Yeah, I think I can only generically say that I've had many, many people who've told me just exactly that, who never thought that they could uh, do something like this, and that going from and many of them were runners. They'd run a half marathon or something, and then they moved up, decided to try an ultra. It became very, very important to them, and in many ways, in many cases, translated to other part of their lives where that might have been in a job that wasn't the greatest thing in the world, and just found the courage to go out and try something new, and that they never thought they could do. So I'm not I'm not trying in any way to say that this is the case broadly, but for more people than I could ever have imagined, it not only has meant a new and exciting sport for them, but in some ways major other changes in their lives that they learned they could try and give a shot, and it might work. If I can give you an aside that is maybe somewhat related, um, I was telling you about that 2002 experience at finishing Badwater, and I want to share this with you because, and with people who might be listening, because it was so unbelievably profound for me. And to this day, when I read what I'm going to read you, it's very hard not to get emotional. So I've said to you that some people have been inspired to to try new things. Well, when I finished that race in 2002, I crossed the finish line. Somebody pulled up a chair. I sat down for a while. There were a lot of people around. And as they started leaving, a woman who I did not know, who was not part of the race, came by and handed me a note and said to me, "Will you please read this, but not now, read it later." And I said, "Sure." Now, the finish line at Badwater is on Mount Whitney, and it's an area where there's camping up there. There's a campground. And I'm guessing that she came from the campground, and because of all the excitement of the finish line, very frequently people who are camping up there kind of hang out and see what's going on. And I'm guessing that's what happened here. Well, she left me a note, and I read the note. I'm going to read it to you now. And she said, I have been looking for some reason to stay alive. As I watch you make it up the hill, I told God if you made it to the finish line, I promise to live 100 more days, then take it from there. Uh, you never know how you're going to affect people. You just never know. Uh, so I wanted to share that with you um, because that was certainly the most impactful thing that's ever happened to me in 20 years of doing this crazy stuff. And that sort of alone by itself almost makes it worthwhile.
Wow, Bob, I am still processing that, but it gives me goosebumps. And sounds like when you got down on your knees to finish that, you were carrying these hopes for so many who are inspired by you. And even though you may have missed the 48-hour cutoff, I think, in that race,
Right.
you had an impact perhaps more profound. Wow. Bob, so talking about some of these deeper themes, you have beaten aging in many ways, but do you have any fears about getting older yourself?
Well, to the extent that somebody who's been overly active my entire life, reaching a point where I might not be able to get myself off the couch, even if I wanted to, that I don't know the word's frightening, but certainly not something I would look forward to. And frankly, I don't really ever expect. But no, I don't think the word is frightening, but they will reach a point in the not too distant future where I'm probably going to have to give this up. Even training right now is not quite as much fun as it used to be. It's a little harder on my body. I've got more aches and pains. I've had to miss a couple of training days in this cycle because my body was just too sore when I got up in the morning, and I said, I need more sleep right now, and that's more important. And to which Coach Lisa agreed, by the way. So yeah, I mean, there's a slowing down process no matter what you do, no matter who you are. That is just happens, and so I'm not looking forward to that day, but I'm realistic about it. Like I said earlier, there are only so many more races that this old body has in me, and we'll see how long the string goes, and maybe we do something else. I mentioned last year I spent time in Europe along the Camino de Santiago with some friends over a number of days. We've actually done it twice. It was wonderful experience. It's running. It's running X number of miles a day from point A to point B, but it's not a race. Take your time, do all the walking you want to do. And so if that's my next phase of adventure where I'm not really racing at all, but doing things like that, if I'm able to, so be it. I look forward to whatever that challenge will be and whatever that experience will become. And that's my best philosophy. I mean, you can't change what's happened, and you can only do you dealt the hand and you do your best with it. And I always try to be very optimistic and see how I can challenge myself.
Bob, I'm told that the Camino de Santiago is not a hike. It is a pilgrimage.
Yes.
And I am curious if you have a spiritual or a meditation practice that brings you peace and keeps you grounded.
Well, it's a fair question. I don't. I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person and a humanist, I suppose. So, doing the Camino de Santiago and winding up at Santiago de Compostela at the Basilica was a fabulous experience, but it wasn't a religious experience for me. But it was meditatively, it was important. So I don't have a real meditation practice. but in a formal way. But informally, uh, yeah, I mean, I do. And part of that is the reading I do. But I don't really do yoga, which I should, and I recommend to runners. And I don't specifically have a meditation practice. Um, but again, it's something that is a great idea. And if it's for you, if it's something that works for you, absolutely encourage it.
Well, obviously, you have cultivated all kinds of other practices, which are just as powerful and profound. Bob, this is a question I like to ask most people. That is, what does being ageless mean to you?
Uh, what does ageless mean to me? I suppose it's not letting somebody else define for you that you are over the hill, or that by a certain age you really shouldn't be doing that anymore. You could get injured, or you could be out there on a trail and have a heart attack, or yeah, any of those things can happen. But uh, being ageless to me is not letting a number stand in the way of uh, continuing to explore yourself and the world around you. You again, you need to be pragmatic. You need to select things that make sense for you, that are within the realm of possibility. I don't have a death wish. I don't have an injury wish. In fact, I do everything I can to assure that I won't become injured. But short of that, within my means and recognizing I need to be responsible for my wife and my family, to the extent that I can explore something new, I want to continue to do that. And there's no reason why any of us at 80 years old cannot, at some level. It doesn't have to be ultramarathon running.
I love that, Bob. A few minutes ago, we spoke about how your running career has impacted and inspired others. Curious, who inspires you at this stage?
Well, as a runner, well, that's a good question.
And doesn't have to
I've
be from the world of running.
right. Well, as I look around at almost any field of endeavor, whether it's theater or acting or sports or politics or religion, at people who are well beyond my age and still very, very active, they all again inspire and reinforce this notion in my head that I don't have to be limited by age. And so that I can't point to a specific person necessarily, but there are many of them. And I think just generically, as you look around and see that other people are doing extraordinary things, I see no reason why I can't be among them to a lesser degree, but that I can't continue to do things that others might say I shouldn't do because I'm too old.
Bob, that's amazing. And then, yeah, I mean, I can see you are still so fired up about running. And I have to remind myself that, you only started your running career just over a couple of decades ago. And I'm guessing that there are adventures that are ahead of you. What is next? What excites you?
Well, in the most immediate short term, I'm going back to Badwater this summer at 80 to try to, and I got in, thank the Lord, to try to set that oldest finisher record this time inside of 48 hours, so that it's not an unofficial finish, it's an official finish. In the short term, Badwater has become a very important part of my life every year. I'm always there doing something, crewing for another runner or working on the staff or racing. So it's really important that as my possible swan song, I don't know, we'll see, that to go out finishing that race, finishing it within the allowable time. Beyond that, I have a friend who's going to be later this year running across Europe. I want to try to go over there and pace him for a few days. I want to do more of these Camino kinds of adventures. I don't have a specific mountain climbing item on my bucket list. In fact, I don't really have a bucket list because what really happens most often is somebody will say to me, I'm going to be doing such and such a thing, or have you heard of such and such a thing? And it gets me excited. And it sounds like something that I would really love to do and think I can. And that's kind of how my next thing happens more often than not. And that's been true with specific races I've run as well, where somebody's mentioned one to me and it sounded like a heck of an idea and we went ahead and did it. So again, no real bucket list, but there will be, there's more to follow, I hope.
Bob, you talk about this. You certainly, let's say, rewriting the script on a bucket list. What yeah, I love it. It's like you surround yourself by this amazing, powerful community that just opens up doorways. And as long as you're keenly listening, amazing things just arise and pull you in their direction. Bob, we know you as this overachieving ultra runner. Is there perhaps a mundane thing that you do, let's say every day, that brings you, let's say, overwhelming peace or joy?
Yes, spending time with and enjoying my wife's company, and my extended family brings great joy to me. And when I say extended family, I have three kids, only one of whom has ever been married, and her husband Greg's daughter is graduating from college in May. So my close family is obviously extremely important to me, but also my extended family. I have very close with a large group of cousins on one side of my family. We stay in very close touch. We try to see each other as often as we can. Unfortunately, scattered all over the country, so it makes it difficult sometimes. But family is extremely important to me, and I spent a lot of time in contact with and thinking about and reminiscing about all of them. And my wife has this wonderful thing she does every Thursday, which is she posts a number of family photos on Facebook that the family has come to absolutely love. And these come from family reunions, and we had a number of professional photographers in the family, and my wife Suzanne has gathered a lot of those photographs. So month after month, week after week, month after month, year after year, she posts those things every Thursday, and it's become a bonding mechanism for a lot of the family. Kind of a thing to gather around. It's been great to see. So yeah, all of that is really important to me.
That is beautiful, Bob. One thing I wanted to ask you earlier, which was around your let's say maintenance and dietary practices. So maybe we can just start with the first, which is obviously you do some very run specific training that you spoke of. But
Kush,
as we get older,
you broke up and I couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again? Forgive me.
absolutely. One thing I wanted to ask you earlier, Bob, was around your maintenance and mobility practices. We spoke about your running earlier and specific training you do for preparing for big races. But also, as we get older, you know, our bodies change and sometimes we get stiffer, we lose muscle. What are some of your practices today with being able to stay fit and agile and strong besides running?
Um, they're probably not as extensive as they should be. I mentioned before that yoga would be a great thing to do, and I once upon a time I did, and I have not done yoga in a long time, but that kind of stretching and conditioning is an important thing that I don't typically do. But I do go to the gym or do online workouts. In fact, Lisa does an online class a couple days a week where I'm lifting and doing a lot of balancing work. And with that class and also on my own, I do a lot of core work. I think it's very, very important to build a strong core. When I can walk instead of take an elevator, I climb the stairs. It's just simple things like that. About 2.5 years ago, my wife and I decided to leave behind the world of animals and become vegan. And actually, even beyond that, it's a diet that is based on the China study, and you not only don't eat anything with a mother or a face, or egg products, or butter, or milk, or any of that, but also very, very little oil. There's a very strict diet that we've been pretty good about maintaining, except when I travel because it's really difficult. And I found that diet, at least for me, and for both of us, has been really great. We feel strong. We've lost our baby fat, and it certainly is very, very heart healthy. And I have a couple of lung issues and a couple of heart issues, and this diet has been a very important factor in my not deteriorating and remaining strong and remaining healthy enough to do these things. So because I train with Lisa year round, even if I'm not training for a specific race, I am doing all the physical things that, or most of them, that I should be doing, plus my core work on the side. And then the diet, again, is extremely important. And I've always been somebody that's been proactive in terms of medical care. So I never shy away from having a test done or having something checked early, like my prostate. So if there's a sign that there could be an issue, I don't delay. I don't put my head in the sand. I check it out and get on it early. So if there is a problem, it can be addressed early. So I think all of those things are part of my best answer to that question.
Bob, I love that answer. I also turned vegetarian, almost vegan, about 8 years ago,
Mm.
and wanted to understand for a second, how do you make sure you're getting, the macronutrients and other needs through a vegetarian diet? Any specific things you do to make sure you're getting like all the right amounts of things, whether it's eating certain kind of foods or supplements?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of, excuse me, I don't really do supplements. I do a couple of vitamins because a non-meat protein diet can shortchange you in a couple of areas, but for the most part, no supplements. I take a couple of prescriptions, but not a whole lot of medication. Um, Fortunately, my wife Suzanne is not only a great cook, but somebody who is very on top of the whole nutritional side of things. And she in particular, both of us, but she in particular, spent a lot of time reading and watching, studying the latest and greatest in terms of what foods are going to offer the best nutritional value. We don't sit down at every meal and count calories and count grams of protein and so on, but we're pretty much on top of what those numbers are. So we have a pretty good idea that we are consuming sufficient quantities during the course of the day. And the other thing is, not everybody needs the same caloric intake, same intake of every nutrient for that matter. Our bodies are not the same. So we found over these last 2.5 years on this diet that what we're doing is working for us. So we tweak here, we tweak there, but we eat pretty healthy. That's the bottom line.
That's wonderful, Bob. You spoke about your breakfast earlier. Is there a meal that you love that you could eat every day?
Yeah, that breakfast, and I do eat it every day. And
Okay.
a lot of salads, a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables. We have compromised in this respect that at first we didn't eat any processed food either, but now there are some vegetable-based processed food that is really, really good. It tastes good. Um, Very little downside. So, vegan butter, for example, is something that uh, makes that slice of whole grain bread a heck of a lot better tasting than without it, right? And I've really become to rely a lot on peanut butter. Peanut butter is a go-to for me, even though because of the oil, I really shouldn't be eating it. So that's a compromise in my diet. But so there's certain things you kind of learn that work for you. And yeah, I mean, we've figured it out, at least at this point.
Very nice. No, I think I'm all over nut butters myself. And one thing I found recently that I've also grown to love is I carry this, again, this processed vegetarian thing, which is textured vegetarian protein. And it's great. Like you just rehydrate it and, sorry, you hydrate it and then it's readily available protein.
Interesting.
I recommend it. Easy to carry. One other thing I wanted to ask you is you spoke about, being proactive, and it sounds like you are with looking after any health needs, any aches and pains that need to be looked at. Are you getting regular checkups, regular blood work? How have you learned to listen to your body better?
Yes, absolutely on a regular checkup basis, right? And I see a cardiologist twice a year. I see a pulmonologist a couple of times a year. Just keep an eye on some things that are going on. Again, trying to be as proactive as possible. Also, a number of years ago, I was living in the Washington, D.C. area, and at Georgetown University took a class on biofeedback that was really helpful. And it, among other things, kind of gives you the ability to listen to your body, as I think you use that expression, and to let it tell you that it's time to have something checked or something's not quite right, something is changing, something's new. So, yeah, paying attention to what's going on and responding to it if there's any question that it might not be a positive thing, for me has always been the way I've approached the medical side of my life. I'm not afraid of going to the doctor by any stretch of the imagination. So, hope that answers it.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. And maybe as you have learned how to listen to your body and listen to your needs, were there some things that you had to like drastically stop doing? Like you were doing a certain thing and you're like, oh goodness, I am totally ignoring this, or I've been doing this wrong. And you changed. I mean, your diet could be one thing, but anything else?
Well, I go back. I actually smoked from the time I was 18 to the time I was 28, believe it or not. And as foolish as that was, back then, uh, many, if not most people, smoked. So the first and most important thing I ever did for myself was give that up, which wasn't easy, but it cold turkey done. My health changed for the better from that point forward. So smoking was certainly a big one, but that's more than 50 years ago. But to this day, I still have some scar tissue in my lungs because of that smoking. So it does stay with you forever, and it's never a good idea. But mostly, I think it's been diet, probably more than anything else. I've done a lot of adventurous things, but I've never done anything like ride a motorcycle in motocross or anything like that, where the chance of injury is really great. So I haven't done those kinds of things. I think the third and last time that I played basketball with guys twice my size and caught an elbow in the nose that broke my nose for the third time, I said, yeah, probably I should give up contact sports. So I haven't played football or basketball in a long, long time, and sometimes you have to pay attention and say, yeah, maybe that's not a great idea. But yeah, diet has been the big one for me.
Wonderful, Bob. Coming to the end of this conversation, thanks for sharing like so much of your story. How do you want people to remember you, Bob? Maybe even beyond ultra running, but as a human being.
Oh, I don't know. I suppose don't be afraid to look over the next hill. Don't be afraid to consider alternatives to your life or things in your life that somebody else might say, that's too risky, or could be dangerous, or, why would you go there or do that? Your family is here, or what? Don't be afraid to look ahead. Think about that. For me, the comparison would be this phenomenal sensation of crossing the finish line. Whatever your finish line happens to be, whether it's in the next job or the next relationship, or the next move, try to be as open-minded as possible, realistic, but also open-minded that you can accomplish a lot at any age in any aspect of your life. Don't be afraid of it. Go for it if you possibly can make it work.
Wow, beautiful parting words of wisdom. Bob, we will be cheering for you for Badwater coming up this summer. Wish you all the best. Thanks so much for coming on Ageless Athlete and for sharing your wonderful story.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Kush.
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup, Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through prior episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.